Sometimes a soul is born into the world with a sense of a predetermined and destined path forward, based on focus and determinations made in the prior lifetime. Such an individual, in some cases very early in life, may know things, may feel like he has already known things that come before his view, or may find life circumstances aligning to guide him in a particular direction. The awakened and developed psychic being can arrange such results, whether the external personality and circumstances acknowledge it or not. In such cases, the individual feels like he is reestablishing a foundation built previously. Sri Aurobindo, in his poem, Savitri, A Legend and a Symbol, in Book 1, Canto 1, states, quote, "A thought was sown in the unsounded void. A sense was born within the darkness depths. A memory quivered in the heart of time, as if a soul long dead were moved to live. But the oblivion that succeeds the fall had blotted the crowded tablets of the past, and all that was destroyed must be rebuilt, and old experience labored out once more." End quote. An individual recounted events from his childhood. He experienced forces pressing intensely on his head on occasions as a young child, to the extent that at times he felt like his head would burst under the pressure. He recounted experiencing, during an illness that manifested a high fever, again during his childhood, the sense of a body far wider than his physical form. He was drawn to reading religious and philosophical literature at a young age. He eventually faced certain external circumstances that led him away from higher education and a career path. He wound up studying texts and attempting to practice yoga on his own, until he eventually identified a spiritual writer who resonated with his deepest sense of the purpose of his life. He stated that he felt like the writer was expressing for him on the printed page his own deepest aspirations, thoughts, and feelings. He also noted that he experienced, in dream, certain significant meetings he would have in the future with individuals who would influence his life and direction. He recognized these individuals when they later came into his environs. When he reflected backwards on his life, he saw that situations, both positive and negative, shaped and guided his steps forward. He met people who aided him on the way, guided and supported him at times, and brought him to a realization that his life was already focused, without his knowing it, even at the time of his birth, and that henceforth he was intended to live a life of dedication. He was moved by the bodhisattva vow of the Buddhist traditions, but felt that his mission was not to help others escape the world of illusion, but to transform it into a true expression of the deeper purpose behind the universal creation. His story is not unique. A similar story has been recounted by many others, which provides evidence of the deeper forces at work in shaping the creation and the individual expressions within that larger universal manifestation. The mother recounted at one point how, as a young child, she received teachings from an individual whom she later recognized as being Sri Aurobindo when she met him in person many years later. In the book, Called to Heal, the story of an African shamanic healer who did everything possible to try to avoid taking on the responsibilities of a healer until she finally recognized that her health and her future depended on taking up that work. Her story shows the way her path was laid out for her and circumstances arranged in such a way that even when her external personality resisted, eventually the direction was set. Paramahansa Yogananda recounted in his autobiography of a yogi how he was drawn to dedicate his life from a young age to spirituality. When he eventually met his guru, He came to understand that he had samskaras from past lifetimes of practice in the spiritual heights of the Himalayas, but needed to now turn his focus toward a dedicated work in the world. The mother observes, quote, "If all goes well, if there is no accident, accidents can always happen, if all goes well at the moment the child is about to be born, the psychic force, perhaps not in its totality, but a part of the psychic consciousness, rushes into the being and from its very first cry gives it a push towards the experiences it wants the child to acquire. The result is that even if the parents are not conscious, even if the child in its external consciousness is not quite conscious, a little child does not have the necessary brain for that. It forms slowly, little by little. In spite of that, it will be possible for the psychic influence to direct all the events, all the circumstances of the life of this child, till the moment it becomes capable of coming into conscious contact with its psychic being. Physically, it is generally between the ages of 4 and 7, sometimes sooner, sometimes almost immediately, but in such a case we deal with children who are not children, who have supernatural qualities, as they say. They are not supernatural, but simply the expression of the presence of the psychic being. But there are people who have not had the chance, or rather the good fortune, if one may call it that, of meeting someone, physically, who could instruct them. And yet they have the feeling that every step of their existence, every circumstance of their life is arranged by someone conscious, so that they may make the maximum progress. When they need a certain circumstance, it comes. When they need to meet certain people, they come. When they need to read certain books, they find them within their reach. Everything is arranged like that, as if someone was watching over them, so that their life may have the maximum possibilities of development. These people may very well say, but what is a psychic being? For no one has ever used these words in speaking to them, or they have not found anybody who could explain to them all that. But for them, often just one meeting is sufficient, just one look in order to wake up. One word suffices to make them remember. But I knew all that. This is exactly what happens to a psychic being which has reached the last stage of its development. After that, it will no longer be bound by the necessity of coming upon earth. It will have completed its development and will be able to choose freely, either to consecrate itself to the divine work or go elsewhere, that is, in the higher worlds. But generally, having come to this stage, it remembers all that has happened to it and understands the great necessity of coming to the help of those who are yet struggling in the midst of difficulties. These psychic beings give their whole existence to the divine work. This is not absolute, inevitable. They choose freely. But 90 times out of 100, this is what they do." End quote. Reference, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, The Psychic Being, Soul, Its Nature, Mission, and Evolution, Section 3, Growth and Development of the Psychic, pages 82 to 84.